extreme radio for extreme times. This is A View from Space with the Spaceman on Talk Radio AM 640.
I'm the Spaceman. This is A View from Space. I'd like to welcome you in to the only radio show on planet Earth that no one knows what time it really starts. I want to welcome you in tonight if you're driving around town listening to AM 640, picking up the show there. Welcome you in. Or if you're at work listening right now via the AM 640 app, I'll welcome you in too. Or if you're listening to me right now on Shaw Direct on Channel 865, I welcome you in also. Or if you're what some call the best seat in the house, listening to the signal picked up on the AM 640 Toronto.com website, I welcome you in. Or if you're listening to me on your 3 or 4G personal communication device via the Stream the World software, I welcome you in. Wherever you are in the world, I welcome you in. Well, the Duchess of Cambridge has given birth to, surprise, a girl. You were surprised? So announces Kensington Palace today, earlier this morning, as a matter of fact, this birth arriving a little late, with the due date being late April. We were told May 2nd, the official date of birth for the princess. A 7-day in numerology. May, the 5th month, the 2nd day. A 7. 7's the number of spirituality, and obviously the date was pre-planned, as all royal births are, and in all likelihood, most probably, in my mind, undoubtedly, it wasn't Catherine, the Duchess of Cambridge, who gave birth to the baby. It was a surrogate mother who was used for the birthing. But that's not the way the Illuminati-controlled mass media are spinning this royal birth story. Of course not. No, their spin is that the Duchess of Cambridge had earlier been admitted to the Lindo wing at St. Mary's Hospital, the same place where the first child, Prince George, was born a couple of years ago in July of 2013. The statement from Kensington Palace added, the Queen, the Duke of Edinburgh, the Prince of Wales, the Duchess of Cornwall, Prince Harry, and members of both families have been informed and are all delighted with the news. Yes, it just turned from, well, the Illuminati-controlled mass media just turned from devastation and death, and massive deaths at that, to joy and wonderment, and a new born baby that is history in the making. Yes, this new baby girl born to this royal bloodline becomes the first ever all-time legitimate heir to the throne of the United Kingdom. The first ever all-time legitimate female heir to the throne. Meaning that the brand new succession rules, they changed them, will apply to this royal female that's newborn just earlier today. Maybe yesterday if you're living on the other side of the world listening. Making history is a possible future queen of the United Kingdom. Yes, whose name has not yet been announced. You can bet the name's already been chosen also. It is just so meticulously all worked out. Will it have Elizabeth? Or, say, maybe Anne? Or even Victoria, I believe, should be in the running. All because of the background, of course, of those three names of former queens. It all remains to be seen. It's going to be very interesting and very, very revealing. The name. Why did I mention those names Anne, Victoria, Elizabeth? Because those names, potential for a female queen to reign for the first ever, all time in history, a female, because of the laws of succession, have been changed to the throne. The gender rule of succession in Great Britain has been changed. This newly born royal princess now joins the line of succession behind the heir apparent, which is her grandfather, Prince Charles, the heir presumptive, her father, Prince William, and, who is second in line, by the way, right now, Prince William, and now the third in line would be this new little princess's brother. Yes, Prince William's firstborn, Prince George. She will be the fourth. The birth of Prince George, you see, bumped Prince Harry down to fifth place, whose real name is in fact Henry. And the birth of this new baby will be historical, even if she does not become queen, because in all likelihood, she will never ascend to the throne. However, she is the first eligible ever female. That's the part of history that is so, well, gargantuan, so royally huge. You see, it was all pre-planned to accentuate gender equality. Goddess worship that I've been telling you about, yes? You see, after Prince William and Kate's marriage, a modernization of the rules of succession was rushed through Parliament ahead of the birth of the royal baby, which turned out to be a male, Prince George. Planned that way. Only males are going to ascend the throne. The female will be given the legal path, but it will be a long time before a first female is born and becomes the monarch. The succession to the Crown Bill cleared the House of Lords in late April of 2013. It became law in the Succession of the Crown Act of 2013 after being given royal assent April 25th, 2013. The numerology behind that date, when it was given royal assent, made into law, in other words, numerology behind it is broken down to a 17. The death date and the resurrection date of the ancient Egyptian first sun king, Osiris, whose wife and sister was Isis, whose first descendant and reincarnated Osiris, the sun Horus. 17. 1 plus 7. 8. The sun worshipper's number. Isis, by the way, famous to you, but an ancient name when it comes to royalty, the female who's known as the mother of all occult religion. It's a Spaceman. It's Talk Radio, AM 640. More next. I'm the guy they call Space. This is a View from Space, Talk Radio, AM 640. Yes, it's now legal. And the birth of the young baby girl, the princess, born earlier today to the Duchess of Cambridge, the father, Duke of Cambridge, because of the succession to the Crown Bill, clearing the House of Lords in 2013. The change in succession rules meant the Duke and Duchess of Cambridge's firstborn child would one day become the monarch, even if they had a daughter, of which was their second child. Under previous rules, a daughter would be behind her younger brothers, even in the pecking order for ascension to the throne. They just keep pushing her back, even though she was more aged. Even a younger male would have been picked before this law was changed. It was announced, as all royal births have been announced too in Great Britain today since the beginning of time, by the town crier, whose position is now held by Tony Appleton. And you can bet that that position, too, is hereditary and has been handed down through generation after generation. I wonder how many. And Tony Appleton is from that long line of long-serving family members who forever held that position. The town crier, the official town crier, announced the birth on the steps of St. Mary's Hospital. Posing for photographers and cameramen around the world for about a half an hour. The princess, who's fourth in line, as I said, to the throne, is safely delivered at 8:34 British Standard Time. Precisely, the palace said in a statement. Duke of Cambridge, present for the birth of the baby, weighed 8 pounds, 3 ounces. Both Catherine and her daughter are said to be doing well, the statement added. It was also stated that the name of the baby was going to be announced in due course. Yes, Catherine looks awful good for having a couple of children in a couple of years, doesn't she? Well, the fact is, the rich don't ruin their bodies by having babies, especially when you're that elite and the bloodline is so special. Surrogates are used, but I find the timing of this birth very suspicious, more than the if she really had or not, because I don't believe she did at all, which would account for the supposed lateness of the birth, this suspicious timing. For reasons what I'm about to tell you. Now, over the past few weeks, well, really from the spring equinox on up until this week, until the first of the Sabbat, known as Beltane, the 1st of May, May Day, as it's celebrated around the world, the high witching holiday, Sabbat. Beltane is the beginning of summer. Samhain is the beginning of winter. And they're thought to be the most important of the 4 Gaelic festivals. Because, you see, Beltane, the beginning of summer, May Day, at that spring equinox is where the woman becomes the dominant one in the world. It's goddess worship. Male are secondary. Then the man takes over because, you see, in the occult world, the world is split into 6 months each for each sex to rule. The summer, starting with the spring equinox, is the woman's time. That's why May Day, on the celebration day, the day after the child is born, that's the reason that would account for the lateness of the birth. The timing would be perfect. A cesarean. And it's done. Rituals were held at these times at Beltane, Samhain, Lughnasadh, and the winter equinox, with both natural and supernatural powers had to be ritually fulfilled with their desires, so that the people, the crops, and the animals would be kept from harm. And it mainly involved the symbolic use of fire at the spring equinox till May Day, where it all ends, the sacrifices of the children. You see where the events I just mentioned come in, is it involves fire in some way, usually on a blood sacrifice to Lucifer with his favorite type of sacrifice, human children. The death of children this year included the deaths of the foreign exchange students, if you'll remember, in the crash of the very recent Germanwings Airbus 380 in the French Alps. There was the South African attack at the school in Kenya, killing 46 kids, as well as dozens of boys who were burnt to death, shot or killed with knives in the dormitory. When the Nepal earthquake hit, it hit like a birth pang to the birthing of a new empire out of the rubble of the old, as America is burning from its own people, lighting its fires and destroying her from within. There were volcanoes even spitting out molten lava in parts of the world since this spring equinox. All of this in that small time frame window for blood sacrifice of children at this time of the year, ending April 30th. Beginning at the spring equinox and ending April 30th. The first one, the most publicized blood sacrifice, of course, the Germanwings Airbus 380 crashing in the French Alps. 3 days, the royal number, after the spring equinox, it hit. And then the party is on. The celebration begins when April 30th passes and that window of blood sacrifice of children closes. May Day, May 1st, Beltane. Then the very next day, the belated royal baby is born. A child is given life, not death. Yes, a royal baby at that. The day after, the all clear is given. Life starts for a royal baby that's destined to be fourth in line to the succession of the throne of the United Kingdom. This historical first female baby to be officially in line to rule. And when you ask, the baby was due in late April. The world was told. I knew better. I knew it was going to be after the child sacrifice window closed. Because that's when everyone needs the, well, finally that's over, the relaxer. And then the pleasant pictures. Cue the baby princess of history. That's why I knew it would be a girl. Why do you think they changed the rules anyway in 2013? No, it was all meticulously and carefully planned and arranged by the Druids, the ancient priestly caste of the Celts, that are the caretakers of this rose line, this bloodline that traces its roots back all the way through the Roman Empire and all of the emperors, through ancient Egypt, the ancient Grecian Empire, even to Isis, Nimrod, and Semiramis, in the ancient days of Mesopotamia and Babylonia. Think about it for a moment. The spring equinox just passes, signaling the woman has the powerful, dominating force for the world for the next 6 months, which is basically when Hillary Clinton also declared that she was running for president. Yes, the male takes over in the fall, but for now, it's all woman. And during the Roman festival of Beltane, it used to be called Floralia in ancient Rome, there were also rituals to protect crops, dairy products, people, and to encourage growth. The Aos Sea, often referred to as spirits or fairies, were thought to be especially active at Beltane, 1st of May, as they were at Samhain, the other very, very occult, witches' Sabbat, Halloween. And the goal of many Beltane rituals was to appease these gods, these demons. Most researchers, by the way, see these Aos Sea, as they're known, as remnants of pagan gods, nature spirits. Pan, they're demons. Beltane is a springtime festival of optimism, during which the fertility ritual again is important, connecting with the power of the woman and the sun. At this time of year, that window of child sacrifice from the spring equinox all the way to May Day, I've always warned of these child blood sacrifice and talk about it every year and explain the window of death that opens in that time period and when it closes. The very next day, May Day, Beltane, a time for celebration, happiness. Beltane, if you'll remember, was when George W. Bush ended the war in Iraq officially on the deck of an aircraft carrier while he was crossing the 33rd degree parallel. He announced the end to the Iraqi conflict on Beltane. Happiness, relief, celebration. Yes, in this time window of black magic, we had the royal wedding, also of Prince William and Kate, if you'll recall. Yes. Pope John Paul II in Rome was made a saint on May 1st. Beltane. The two rituals crucial to the satanic hierarchy which is running the Illuminati agenda, which has everything to do with the belief of the divine right of kings. The plan of the Illuminati is to destroy the current empire, and as you can already see, the American empire is really walking farther and farther out onto that plank that is their economic indebtedness. And the people are forming a revolution. You could call it a revolution. A huge pushback to the leaders of America because they know they're sinking. I'm the Spaceman. It's Talk Radio, AM 640. More right after this break. I'm the guy that calls Space. I communicate by email only. Space at 640toronto.com, one address. The other, Spaceman at 640toronto.com. RG writes, yes, and the girls in Kenya are also saved today from the Islamic extremists. Again, right at Mayday. And yes, he is absolutely correct about that story. And one more. Greetings, Space, from CB. Just wanted to drop a quick line to let you know I'll be listening, as usual, in what some call the best seat in the house. Looking forward to hearing your take on the new princess born today. This came in before the show began. You might want to know, this emailer knows my my topic for the evening. That's how well this person, CB, knows this show. I've tried explaining it to my wife, he said, as we watched on the news. How could Kate look so good after having a baby hours before? Did she indeed birth this baby? My wife wouldn't even hear of it, although she should know better. She's had 2 kids, and ain't no way she looked close to that good. Anyway, looking forward to the show. Happy for the 8 o'clock starts. I'm sure there's plenty of people who won't know the new start time. Such is the case when you have the only show without set times. Later, Spaceman CB. Yes, Beltane. Pope John Paul II in past made a saint on Beltane. Prince William and Kate Middleton. The weekend of Beltane, they married. You see, this has everything to do with the divine right of kings and rituals to keep it all in place. The plan of the Illuminati is to destroy the current empire that is running the world now, America, to a new and final global empire that will change everything and place the highest ranking bloodline of Cain family member, which they call the Rose Line, at the head of the satanic world conquest. He will be the Antichrist. He will demand to be worshipped as God. It will be called the Golden Age Returned. The plan all revolves, as I said, around the precept called the divine right of kings. Well, who came up with that? Turn your radio up. This coming New World Order will once again return the world back to the way it was in the ancient occult-believing world of past history, because it was believed in the ancient past that kings and queens were gods. There's some background on this archaic, ancient, outdated law of the divine right of kings. The figure of God's majesty. His captain, steward, deputy-elect, anointed, crowned. Spoken by Richard II, the Plantagenet, rightful owner of the throne of the United Kingdom. But if you'll recall, they were defeated in the War of the Roses. And the Plantagenets ended with an errorless king and were taken over usurped by another family. The divine right of kings can be dated back to the medieval period, where it highlighted the superiority and legitimacy of a monarch. At its core, the concept of the divine right of kings has religious and political origins, therefore furthering its legitimacy. As a whole, this concept states that only God can judge a monarch because only God has the authority. It believes that a form of monarchical government is the most appropriate, and allegiance should be sworn to the legitimate heir to the crown. I'm not making this up. They believe this to this day, and are going to bring this system back. The divine right of a king. The driving force behind the success of the divine right of kings idea was the idea that you punish your peasants, your slaves, your realm to enforce obedience. In reality, this established fear among a sovereign's subjects, and in a lot of ways made the monarchs of this period very tyrannical, which is coming back. To assert the obedience of their subjects, they would hold public executions, which most certainly generated fear. Public executions. It was the beheadings that everyone is now aghast at that ISIS purportedly does on YouTube. No, these back in the day were not YouTube videos watching people get their heads cut off, scaring them, terrorizing. No, they were real in the town center, and the whole city turned out to watch. The monarchy asserting their obedience on their subjects. Public executions, which most certainly generated an incredible fear. Monarchs also used tools like propaganda to ensure the loyalty of their subjects. The idea of sedition taught subjects that divine retribution would occur if they acted out against their ruler. God would get you if you spoke evil of the king. The divine right of kings also explained the idea of social rankings, although it's now considered to be absurd. Well, to you and I, maybe, not to the elites. This divine theory instituted a political hierarchy that prospered during this time period, and some reformers in the 16th century considered that some resistance was good and initiated much-needed change. In the medieval period, this theory found its roots mainly because people felt that God had bestowed great power onto the kings, and it was their duty to serve God's anointed monarch on earth, a concept that continued through to the early modern period. I mean, we're talking about brainwashing here, and many people are still brainwashed about having to have the monarchy. They believe it's essential. This idea started to become popularized during the reign of King Henry VIII, the guy who fought with the Roman Catholic Church. Because, you see, he needed to assert his legitimacy when he separated from the Roman Catholic Church. Henry VIII kicked the Roman Catholic Church out of England. and razed all of their churches and built Anglican churches over top of them, separating England from Rome, and would no longer pay taxes. It was a long process, but with the most important events occurring during the 1530s, it got done. During this time, Henry VIII fought hard to disconnect England from the papacy, the Vatican, and succeeded with the Act of the Submission of the Clergy. That again, the act called the Submission of the Clergy. Queen Elizabeth I, the very black magic queen of the 1700s, also used the divine right of kings idea because she needed to assert her legitimacy to her counselors and her public also, considering needing to be seen as God. Considering Elizabeth felt her title was bestowed on her by God, that's what she was told by the Druids, she felt the need to defend the realm, head the Church of England, and protect the people. There were many people who felt Elizabeth I did not have the right to rule, being that she was the daughter of Anne Boleyn, meaning that they could have been executed for treason. Elizabeth I was forced to use her monarchical authority when Mary, Queen of Scots, and the Duke of Norfolk were implicated in plots that were conjured up to overthrow her and renounce the divinity of a rightly ordained monarch. James VI of Scotland, later James I of England, was also a key believer, which ultimately created royal superiority over its subjects. This is the one who rewrote the King James Version of the Bible, James I. He also believed in the divine right of kings idea. James wrote what's known as the Basilicon Doron in 1599 for his son, and then heir Prince Henry. This treatise highlighted the powers that kings had over their subjects, but renounced becoming a tyrant and emphasized being a good Christian. It states that a king must acknowledge himself ordained for his people, having received from God a burden, and that burden of governance, whereof he must be accountable. The king is responsible to God for you, their subject. We're going to return to that very system. Perhaps the height of this theory's popularity, the divine right of kings, came during the reign of Charles I, who was James' son. Later, when Charles I began emphasizing his hereditary claims through portraiture, his people were not convinced by his use of propaganda. Charles I completely disregarded Parliament totally in favor of his divinity and ostracized himself from court life even. He believed strongly in his royal prerogative and was considered by, many as an absolutist monarch and a tyrant. These beliefs eventually influenced the breakup of parliamentary relations, as you probably would be aware. Civil wars came on and finally culminated with Charles I being executed in 1649. The practice of divine right of kings has been exercised by many monarchs, with some using it as a tool to abuse their power. I'm Space. There's more right after this break. I'm the guy to call Space. This is a View from Space. It's Talk Radio AM 640. I communicate only by email. Two addresses, space@640toronto.com and spaceman@640toronto.com. Chris checks in, a female. I think you're right about Kate using surrogates. I've had 2 kids, and all I wanted to do was sleep after giving birth. And she asked me about Lady Diana. She believes that maybe Lady Diana defied the royals in Buckingham Palace and delivered her boys, Prince Harry and Prince William, herself. Well, the jury's out for me on that one because I didn't really look into that one, but I know for sure Kate Middleton has not had any babies. Now, for a moment, I'm not going to say that she is not the ovary donor. Of course. They're meticulously picked, these bloodlines, especially at this high elite level. Now, Shakespeare wrote Macbeth, of course, in 1606. It's important to understand the political context in which that play was written. Because, you see, as the divine right of kings is the key to the main theme of that play, which is the excessive ambition that turned out having terrible consequences. Shakespeare was writing for the theater during the reigns of two monarchs, Queen Elizabeth I, the one I just told you about, the very black magic court that she had, and King James I, her son, who became the King of Scotland and of England, the United Kingdom, uniting those two kingdoms, as well as Ireland. The plays Shakespeare wrote during the reign of Queen Elizabeth I, such as A Midsummer Night's Dream, are often seen to embody the general, happy, confident, optimistic mood of the Elizabethans. But those he wrote during James' reign, such as Macbeth, Hamlet, well, they're darker, much more cynical, reflecting the insecurities of the Jacobean period. Macbeth, you see, was written the year after the gunpowder plot of 1605. Guy Fawkes. When Queen Elizabeth died, Queen Elizabeth I died in 1603, she had no children, or even nephews or nieces. The throne was offered to James Stuart, James VI of Scotland then, who then became James I of Great Britain. He was a distant cousin of Elizabeth I, being a descendant from Margaret Tudor, the sister of Elizabeth's grandfather. Henry VIII was the father. James was the son of the Catholic Mary, Queen of Scots. Henry VIII, the father, who had been deposed and imprisoned, Mary, Queen of Scots, when he was a baby and later executed Elizabeth's orders. Brought up by Protestant regents, James maintains a Protestant regime in Scotland when he came of age, and so was an acceptable choice for England, which had become firmly Protestant under Elizabeth I. But his ascension was by no means a popular choice with everybody, since he was not a direct descendant of Elizabeth I. There were other relatives who believed they also had a strong claim to the throne, and James feared that discontented factions might gather around them. At the first, the Catholics had hoped James might support them. Can't you see the Celtic Druidic priests pitting one bloodline against the other to manipulate their outcome? Yes, at first the Catholics had hoped James might support them since his mother had been such a staunch Catholic. But when they realized that this would not happen, well, conspiracies developed, one of which was the gunpowder plot. Guy Fawkes and his men tried to blow up James and his parliament, the year 1605. The conspirators were betrayed and horribly tortured on the rack until they confessed. They were then executed in the most brutal fashion as a warning, as I told you earlier, to other would-be traitors and all other subjects of the realm. fear the monarch. Shakespeare's play, Macbeth, is really a cautionary tale, warning any other potential plotters to kill the king of the awful fate that would surely await them once they were caught. Religious thinkers in the Middle Ages believed in the idea of what's known as the Great Chain of Being. This was the belief that God had designed an ordered system for both nature and humankind. Within every creature and person had an allotted place. So everything had its place in this well-designed, ordered system set up by God. It was considered an offense against God for anyone to try to alter their station in life. After death, though, all would be raised in the kingdom of heaven. And if they respected God's will, they were in. Since royal rank was bestowed by God, royal rank, it was a sin to aspire to become royal. You either were born into the bloodline or you weren't, you see. You can't aspire to become king. That is, get enough men together, attack the other king and beat him. No. That royal rank was given to that family bloodline by God himself, they believed. So it was a sin to try to make yourself royal when you're not. This doctrine, a convenient one for King James, by the way, was still widely held in Shakespeare's day. Although his mother, Mary Queen of Scots, was a beautiful and charismatic woman, James I knew the truth of how homely he looked, and really never possessed the charisma necessary to aspire loyalty from any of the subject, but he was very intelligent, very well educated, and he believed in the precepts that he felt would keep his position secure. One of those was the idea of the divine right of kings. This was the belief that the power of monarchs, again, was given directly by God. In other words, who said you were God or king? God did. So you see, that made monarchs only answerable to God. Any opposition to the king was an attack on God himself, and therefore a grave sacrilege, the most heinous of sins, and, well, the full extent of the law would be leveled against you. The anointing ceremony ritual performed at the coronation made the king virtually divine. All the Stuart kings strongly supported the belief in their divine right to rule because it lawfully kept them in their positions of power. The kings and queens of Great Britain even claimed Christ-like powers of healing. Yes, they did. If you check history, you'll discover this. In Shakespeare's Macbeth, which is still being taught today in higher learning institutions around the world, brainwashing the students, Shakespeare even records this so-called divine healing power that I just spoke about when he wrote of King Edward of England, successfully healing the sick. Such sanctity hath heaven given his hand, was the way Shakespeare penned it. Queen Anne, who ruled from 1702 till 1707, was the last British monarch who used the Queen's touch to heal the sick. One of the reasons why I think Anne's name is in the running. Also, Victoria's name is in the running because she began the Industrial Revolution, and the Industrial Evolution is over, if you'll notice. The workforce is no longer needed. Machines can do it now. Industry has changed. And the new system that's coming will have a very small workforce. Because machinery and software will do the rest. So you see how Victoria's name is quite apropos for this new princess baby that is born to the Windsors that could conceivably and not likely end up as Queen of England. While it's true that Shakespeare's plot he concocted for the play Macbeth is only partly based on fact, but one thing is true, and that is that Macbeth was a real 11th century Scottish king. He really actually lived. The historical Macbeth did have a valid right to the throne and was, in fact, the King of Scotland from 1040 until, I believe, 1057. In around he succeeded Duncan, who he had defeated in battle, of course. But the real Duncan was a weak man, around Macbeth's own age, not the respected elderly figure that you read about in the play Macbeth. In real life, Macbeth was succeeded by his own stepson, not by Duncan's son, Malcolm, who came to the throne later. The Stuart kings claimed descent from Banquo, but Banquo is a mythical figure who never existed, like King Arthur, or so they say. Anyway, but couldn't a sudden discovery of, say, a corpse like Richard III lately, yielding DNA in some ancient archaeological dig somewhere in the UK, maybe under a parking lot, change all that? It certainly could. More on Shakespeare and the divine right of kings propaganda when I return on Talk Radio AM 640. I'm Spaceman. This is AVFS. I'm the Spaceman. This is a show that only communicates by email. There's two addresses you can reach me at: spaceman at 640toronto.com or space at 640toronto.com. They come rolling in before the show even begins. BT writes, well, she had a girl, Kate Middleton, and I bet you they'll name the girl Elizabeth. Why Elizabeth? Well, you know they love that number 3, and it would be Elizabeth III, the royal magic number if she ascended to the throne. Yes, there are a few names. Even Anne is another one that I picked, who ruled from 1702 till 1707. The last British monarch, by the way, to use the Queen's touch to heal the sick. As I stated before the break, too, King Edward of England also used that propensity to heal the sick. Such sanctity hath heaven given his hand, was the way Shakespeare penned it in Macbeth. Shakespeare found inspiration, by the way, for his version of the story of Macbeth in Bardic Tales of Holinshed, a historian in his own time. Holinshed does include Banquo in his version of the story. Now, all of the Stuart kings, the Roman Catholic kings of England, claim descent from Banquo, a mythical figure who never really existed, it's said. But, hey, an archaeological dig, as I said earlier, could change all that. Holinshed does include Banquo in his version of the story, but he also is a traitor, Banquo, who assists Macbeth in the murder. And as a tribute to the Stuarts, and James in particular, James I, Shakespeare presents Banquo as a wise, noble, and regal figure who arouses jealousy in Macbeth as much for his own good qualities as for the promise the witches make of him to found him a dynasty, if he did their bidding. Oh, there was plenty of black magic conjuring in the ancient courts of kings and queens of of the United Kingdom. Even today, I believe. During the reign of Queen Elizabeth I, Shakespeare's acting company was called the Chamberlain's Men, and it is known that they performed for the Queen's court, too. After the ascension of James I, they changed their name to the King's Men as a tribute to him. The patronage of the king and his court was obviously valuable to Shakespeare. In Macbeth, Shakespeare goes out of his way to flatter and please the king in different ways. Macbeth, the character who usurps the place of a lawful king, is shown as losing everything as a result. Remember, the deadly sin, to try to move yourself from the station in life you've been placed in. He becomes hated, demonized by all of his subjects, as does his wife who supports him in his crime, of course. The fictitious Banquo, whom the Stuarts claimed as their ancestor, is presented in a totally positive light. When the witches show Macbeth the future, he sees a line of kings descended from Banquo that seems to stretch out to what's referred to all the way to the crack of doom. The crack of doom is simply referring to the King James Version of the Bible in the New Testament as the day at the end of time following Armageddon, when the Christian God will decree the fates of all individual humans according to the good and evil of their earthly lives. This flatters King James with the promise of a long-standing dynasty, although it, in fact, James' father, Charles I, would be executed, and the Stuart line was to die out with Queen Anne in 1714. The last monarch, as I said, to claim healing powers of touch, because royalty in those days believed they were gods. Shakespeare also included other enthusiasms of the king in the play Macbeth. James had written a book called Basilicon Doron, which looks at the theme of kingship. In the book, James identifies the ideal king as one who does his duty to God and to his country, and who is also a man of spotless personal integrity. Notice that's how they play the role of all of the royals, but the only one that can pass the test so far in spotless is Prince William. In the play Macbeth, Shakespeare plays this attribute up too, with the character of Malcolm representing the template of the perfect, ideal king. What's more, Edward the Confessor is pictured as the holy king who has the power literally to heal people at his touch. Yes, I would say to you, this would come across to a contemporary audience as an indirect tribute to James himself. You see, James also was very interested in the supernatural, the black magic powers, and in fact had written a paper called Daemonology on that very subject. During the reign that he had as King of Scotland, James was known to have been directly involved in some witch trials at North Berwick. Women were regularly burnt as witches in those days, and Shakespeare presents his witches unequivocally as powerful and evil emissaries of the devil. In his day, the majority of the general public, too, believed in witches and the power of the supernatural. And the witch scenes would have been taken very seriously by them. And I believe it is still being taken very seriously today by the elites that are running our world. It's that simple. And I explain it every week as it happens. the play-by-play, if you like, of the new world order that's coming. One of my emailers wrote me, MS, says, "Hey, Space, I just saw on CBC with the wall-to-wall coverage of the Illuminati royal baby birth that she was given a 62-gun salute. Thanks to your show, I know 6 + 2 = 8. 8 is the sun worshipper's number. Did anyone else notice this? I mean, the customary royal gun salutes today in London for the new-born baby princess, whose name hasn't been announced to the supposed waiting world yet. Well, it was meant to be quite impressive, you know, since it's the first ever royal baby to be born female and still retain her position of ascension to the throne. That's big. That would, I'd say, likely be seen as the highest ever ranking job attained by a female so far in the history of this world. Hence the royal salute heard in and around London earlier today. I explain more when I return after the break. I'm the Spaceman at AVFS. This is Talk Radio, AM 640. Emails to spaceman@640toronto.com. The address, spaceman@640toronto.com or space@640toronto.com. It's the only way I communicate. TK writes, "My first time listening live. Been listening for a year and a half now. Very cool. Checking in from Washington, D.C. The Ouija board is 125 years old. It was celebrated on the 25th of April officially, and it was patented in Baltimore. On April 25th, 2015, not long ago, a peaceful march and protest was inflamed into a Luciferian hellstorm by government agitators with rocks, bottles, and military crowd control sonic wave technology. The Illuminati times everything. Just need the eyes to see, the ears to hear, and the heart to perceive." Signed, TK. So as I was saying before the break, this very royal, historic occasion that happened today, the first female royal ascendant to the throne of England, born female, still retaining her position of ascension to the throne. Not pushed out of the way any longer. She holds her ground. That's big. As I said before the break, that's to be seen as the highest ever ranking job attained by a female in this world. Even if Hillary Clinton became the president of this crumbling American empire, this job of this new royal baby would even be more massive than that. The standard royal salute, by the way, is 21 guns, reserved for heads of state. When the salute's given from a royal park, say, like Hyde Park, an extra 20 guns are added. Hence the 41-gun salute. There's also a 124-gun salute, which is really crackers, isn't it? When the Queen Elizabeth II, and Duke of Edinburgh, her husband, have their birthdays occurring on the same weekend, a 124-gun salute is given from the Tower of London. Must go on for quite some time. It's a lot of banging in London. Doesn't happen all the time, though. The royal newborn, born just a few hours ago, received a 41-gun salute in Hyde Park, as well as a 62-gun salute from the Tower of London. For 62, it's first 21 guns, the usual, the regular royal salute, 21 guns, plus 20 more for being fired from a royal fortress, the Tower of London, plus 21 more for being it in the City of London, which is separate from London proper itself. You see, there is a City of London. And that adds up to 62 guns each. 6 plus 2, as my emailer stated earlier when he was watching the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation. 8, the sun worshippers number. And, know it or not, there are even 42 gun salutes for the Royals. For instance, the King's Troop, the Royal Horse Artillery, gave a 42 gun Royal salute in Green Park, London, on February 6th last year. It was this year. February 6th, 2015. It marked the Queen's ascension to the throne. A 42 gun salute. You see, there's nothing new under the sun. It's simply royal history being repeated. They're always drawn back to the ancient Egyptian mystery religion. Yes, they are. Even today. I can't make this stuff up. American Pharaoh wins the run for the roses, as it's called. The roses, remember? The rose line. The holy bloodline of the divine right of kings, and that what they possess. The Kentucky Derby, the run for the roses, at Louisville's Churchill Downs. The richest horse race in America. Won by American Pharaoh. You see what I mean by returning back to the ancient mystery religion of Egypt. Horse number? Yes, 18,666. Or a double 9, Satan's favorite number. 8 and 1 is 9. Because you see, 9 always returns to itself. That was the number that was on American Pharaoh. In this time where the American empire is crumbling on their richest horse race in America. The run for the roses. No, there is nothing new under the sun. It's simply history repeating itself. Doomed to, they're going to see that we do until the new system is in place. The golden age the Illuminati want to return back to. Osiris, you see, was the first sun king, and he made all submit to a test to enter eternity. Just like the crack of doom described in the Christian Bible. After Armageddon, God judges all to see if they come into heaven. This was replicated also in the ancient Egyptian mystery religion. Actually had the idea before Christianity. Osiris, the first sun king, made all submit to a test. He was the god. To enter eternity, he was the pharaoh. He asked the afterlife seeker searching questions about how they'd lived their life. The test was to answer 42 questions. 42 of your sins, by the way, were forgiven. The rest you held accountable for, and the 42 questions would find out why you acted the way you acted. You needed to have the right answers to get into the afterlife through Osiris. And Thoth, also Nimrod, also known as Merlin, was present with Osiris to record the outcome. The last question of the 42 questions is the one that would save most people. As long as there is one person who is glad that the individual had lived his life here on earth, then that individual hits the jackpot, or should I say the jackal pot, and is redeemed. So why 42, you say? Why are they so enthralled with 42? The Kabbalah says that God created the world by using the first 42 letters of the Torah. So these became the 42 building blocks or stages of creation. The Kabbalah is deemed by many to be satanic devil worship of Lucifer, Satan. The Kabbalah was never allowed into the Christian Bible at the Council of Nicaea. You don't find the Kabbalah chapters anywhere in the Older New Testament. It was, in fact, taboo to even believe in it. Now, taboo is an interesting word. Words are interesting when you know the exact meaning and the intention. The Merriam-Webster Dictionary defines the word taboo as something in the spirit world too forbidden, too profane to use, or to even attempt to have contact with, because of a belief that the spirits in that spirit world are said to be dangerous because of their supernatural powers. The Merriam-Webster Dictionary also states taboo as meaning something banned or something on the grounds of morality and taste. You can't use it, or can't see it, or can't touch it, or can't eat it. There are even some symbols that are deemed so powerful, even in your world today, that are in fact prohibited, not allowed, banned from being displayed in all countries, some of all countries. The swastika is an obvious example of that. What are the emotive associations with the sideways 8? This infinity Egyptian symbol, also called the lemniscate in Latin. Or maybe you weren't even aware. The practice of using emoticons is an ancient practice, going back to as far as the Garden of Eden. Yeah, the ancient Egyptian symbols are constantly being flashed before your eyes today in the Illuminati-controlled mass media. And the emoticon is, of course, a hidden, meaning, symbolic message. That's why you go online to message your buddies, and most likely sometimes have used an emoticon to convey a whole thought or a frame of mind to your intended receiver. The emoticon, for the ancient Egyptian, the lemniscatus, from Latin meaning ribboned, also from the Greek spoken as lemniskos, meaning a ribbon or even bandage. And many researchers have looked deep into this shape of this sideways 8. Will tell you the number 8 positioned horizontally is assigned to denote the highest idea of infinity, foreverness, referring to distances or numbers. I'll tell you now that the sideways 8 is the actual analemma of the sun, the pathway of the sun that takes across the sky in 1 year. See, if you take a picture of the sun at the same time every day, all year long, you'll find that it's a sideways 8 after it completes 1 Earth year. That's why 8 is the sun worshippers' number. The people I speak about are sun worshippers. The sideways 8 is another example of the Ouroboros as well, the snake coiling and biting its tail. The Ouroboros symbol has been used to describe the Kundalini energy, according to the 2nd century Yoga Kundalini Upanishad. The divine power, Kundalini, shines like the stem of a young lotus, like a snake, coiled around upon herself as she holds her tail in her mouth and lies resting half asleep in the base of the body. Another interpretation is that the Kundalini equates to the entwined serpents of the caduceus of the Greek god Hermes, and entwined serpents represent divine balance in the West, or esoterically, human DNA. More on the Sideways 8 and emoticons from the past on Talk Radio AM 640. I'm Space. I'm the guy that calls Space. It's View from Space. Talk Radio AM 640. A lot of interesting emails tonight. DH writes, for instance, Kathmandu's living goddess survives the Nepal earthquake. A 9-year-old girl, Kumari, worshipped as a living goddess of Kathmandu's Durbar Square. The home of this living goddess escapes damage of this Nepal earthquake. And you heard about the horrendous damage. You saw the pictures of Kathmandu. Very destructive. A tradition combines elements of Hinduism and Buddhism, my emailer writes. She protected us, was the quote. Durga Shakya believes the quake was a punishment from the gods for disrespect, and that the Kumari, this 9-year-old girl, worshipped as the living incarnation of a goddess, knew this earthquake was coming. And it is amazing to see the house okay. It shows her power, all the Hindus and Buddhists believe. As ever, fascinating show, DH. Well, some people find it fascinating and others can't quite grasp just what this show's about, because it is based on spirituality, not physicality. Now, as I was saying before the break, the lemniscate, taken from the Latin word meaning ribbon, the sideways 8. It's an 8 on its side, and it's the ancient Egyptian symbol for infinity. Well, that emoticon and the whole family of related emoticons that go with it can be traced back to ancient esotericism. This symbol was described by Plato in the Timaeus, with later commentaries by the Latin writer and philosopher Macrobius and Stoics. And even eventually this symbol becomes the gyres of St. Thomas's Aquinas. A gyre is a circular or spiral motion describing circular movement of angels, not angles, I say angels. Listen carefully to a black magic spell that is about to be revealed to you. The divination tables used by the English mathematician, magus, black magician named John Dee, who held a position right next to Queen Elizabeth I in that very occult court, advised her of her horoscope, the ritual dates, and what to do on what particular dates. He'd be the one to choose the timing of the days, the months, the year that things would happen in her reign on. John Dee was Queen Elizabeth I's closest handler and manipulator. John Dee was a druid, too, and in contact with him all the time. He was the head of the security spy ring with Queen Elizabeth I's court and everywhere else in and out of the realm, too. You see, Queen Elizabeth I is the one monarch that had expanded the British Empire to its greatest size than any other monarch before her. You could describe John Dee as having, well, eyes literally everywhere in the kingdom. The all-seeing eye in those days, if you like. That's who John Dee was. The original James Bond was John Dee. He was the first one ever to be given a license to kill, as they say, directly from Queen Elizabeth I herself. These two were heavily into the use of black magic for control inside and outside of her realm. There was also a third party who played a major role in Queen Elizabeth's inner sanctum of people, and that was Sir Francis Bacon, whom I believe was in fact William Shakespeare, and wrote all the works of Shakespeare as we know them today under the pseudonym of William Shakespeare. I believe it also was Sir Francis Bacon who was the one who chose the words used when the King James Version of the Bible was printed by King James I, Queen Elizabeth I's son. John Dee, of the court of Queen Elizabeth I, was the mother of the later King James, who is synonymous with the printing of the King James Version of the Bible. That was King James I. Quite interesting, isn't it? Yes, there are two royal families, royal bloodlines in Great Britain that have claims that they are the descendants of the royal house of David, a bloodline which supposedly produced many of the ruling houses of Europe today, including the British monarchy and the family now ruling called the House of Windsor. The other family important to this lineage is the Scottish House of Stuart. Despense, originally Spencer. Diana, the most famous descendant of that bloodline, former wife of Prince of Wales, mother of Prince William and Harry. Many believe that the Windsor claims to the throne of England had actually been illegitimate, being descendants of the Germanic house of Saxe-Coburg-Gotha. Most agree that the Stuart bloodline lineage that includes all of the Roman Catholic lines of kings and queens are not only the true rightful heirs to the throne of England and Scotland and Ireland, but also to the throne of David and Israel itself. Because of this illegitimacy, it was one of the highest importance that this imposter Windsor line, now occupying the British throne in Buckingham Palace, who are the highest-ranking occult family in the world, being the purest bloodline of the family of Cain, chooses a marriage partner for their current heir, their heir apparent to the throne, Prince Charles, who is still Prince Charles, the highest-ranking descendant of this legitimate Stuart bloodline, to marry him. She must be a virgin, and of the Merovingian bloodline also, in order to legitimize the authority claimed of them by being descendants of the man who led the very first crusade, who was backed by the Roman Catholic Church for the first crusade, Godfrey de Bouillon, the man who was given the honor of the kingdom and declared king of Jerusalem in 1099. Godfrey de Bouillon held the royal position of the French Duke of Lower Lorraine. Now, Lower Lorraine was then part of an ancient medieval German kingdom where immense power even now is emitted from. It took in part of what's today's Belgium, Luxembourg, the Netherlands, and included a part of Germany and a part of France also. It's today the seat of power for the European Union, that are putting together the old Roman Empire once again, newly formed. This area of the world has always had great power. How powerful? Godfrey de Bouillon, the French Duke of Lower Lorraine, was one of the first and one of the most important leaders of the Crusades. Although Godfrey de Bouillon fought on the side of Henry IV against Pope Gregory VII during the investiture controversy, he later set out in 1096 for the Holy Land with other French knights, including his brother Baldwin, after the Roman Catholic Pope Urban II ordered the First Crusade. It was a business deal, and in doing so, Godfrey de Bouillon reportedly mortgaged his entire duchy to pay for the tens of thousands of knights and foot soldiers that he took with him, which were made up mostly of Germans, Flemings, Belgians, Walloons, Germanic Celts. The investiture controversy was simply the Roman Catholic Church saying that God alone set up the church, putting the Pope in a position higher than a monarch. Divine right of kings being threatened here, correct? In 1075, Pope Gregory VII asserted in the Dictatus Papae, a collection of writings, one of which claimed that the Pope had the power to depose an emperor or a king. It declared that the Roman Church was founded by God alone and that the papal power was the sole universal power, decreeing the Pope alone had the power to appoint or depose high-ranking members of the Church, or even move them from place to place. This declaration upset the balance of power in the early Middle Ages because it eliminated the power, you see, of investiture by the king, who felt that he was in fact divinely appointed by God himself and could appoint bishops and abbots with the symbols of power in the church, as well as pick who he wanted in the political arena. A standoff, the Roman Catholic Church the kings and queens bloodline came to a head with Henry VIII, of course. Godfrey de Bouillon was the first of the Crusade leaders to reach the city of Constantinople and meet with the Byzantine Emperor Alexius Comnenus. As a result, Godfrey was also the first of the Crusade leaders to deal with the unexpected request of Alexius, the emperor, to take an oath of allegiance to the emperor. Now, as a member of the Western nobility, Godfrey de Bouillon and the other leaders of the Crusade who followed him were supposedly very uncomfortable with taking an oath to an Eastern emperor. Yet Godfrey de Bouillon ultimately realized such an oath was necessary for continued support for the war against Islam. As a result, he set the pattern for those who followed by taking an oath in exchange for proper Byzantine support for the Crusade efforts. A deal was struck by the kings of the royal bloodline in the Roman Catholic Church way back then in the days of Godfrey de Bouillon. This takes on a whole new meaning today when you understand that the first ever and this fight over a new Palestinian state and the control of the super important eastern part of Jerusalem is what the Crusades were actually all about then. The British monarch, Queen Elizabeth II, has met with the head of the Roman Catholic Church. They did it in Britain, and it was the first time they'd ever met since the Roman Empire lost control of Britain back 1600 years ago to the very year, because it happened in 2010. Yes, you heard correct. Pope Benedict, then Pope the 16th, met the Queen Elizabeth, on the 1600th anniversary of the Romans getting kicked out of Britain on the, wait for it, 16th of September 2010. More when I return on Talk Radio AM 640 with the number 16, a 88, the Sun Worshippers number, on AVFS. Coming back on AM 640 right after this break. On the Gadigal Space, it's a view from space. Talk Radio AM 640. Emails to space640toronto.com or spaceman@640toronto.com. And I thank you so much for the one that you sent me. I really do appreciate it. My resident numerologist just checked in. SR writes, Space, hope you're doing well, as he usually states. Using simple English gematria, he breaks down numerologically the horse of the Run for the Roses, the richest horse race in America, at Churchill Downs earlier today. American Pharoah wins it. Who'd have thunk it? Adds up to a 131 when you add all the letters of American Pharoah. In 131, you see a number the same in opposite directions. It's a 13. One's backwards. In 131, we see a 13 in two different directions. 13, the cult's number, the number of death and rebirth. Later Space SR. Yes, it all fits. The numerology with the Queen of England meeting for the very first time a Roman Catholic Pope since 1600 years before. No Pope had visited officially. It happened in 2010. A deal has been struck. It was the 16th of September. It was Benedict the 16th on the 1600th anniversary of the Romans losing power in Britain. On the 1600th anniversary of Rome's leaving Britain, the first official day is the 16th of September. What's the highest possible magnification of a number to give maximum power to the event? 3. It's all 3 fairy tales, history, folklore, mythology. Knocked 3 times, clicker heels 3 times. The door to Parliament, the UK and Canada, opened to start a new session by 3 knocks on the parliamentary doors with the black rod. Then there was that meeting that the papacy had, consummating a deal that was first struck in 1096 with the First Crusade. With the intermingling of the Saxburg-Coburg-Gotha bloodline connected to Cain, with the legitimate heirs to the British throne, the Stuart bloodlines, this cult believes they now have created what they see would be a truly unique Christ descendant from such a union of their dragon-related lineages that would forever legitimize their tight grasp on the British monarchy. Therefore, this intriguing and most infamous of arranged marriages between Charles and Princess Diana was not hatched, as you might think, solely by the Windsors themselves. No, it was far more ancient design than that, and connected to the Knights Templar. This secret, secret being propagated by the world, which was let out of the bag in the Holy Grail book by Michael Bejean, Richard Lee, and Henry Lincoln. Yes, 3 writers for that book. It had to be Holy Blood, Holy Grail, in which the 3 authors make the shocking claim of the secret of the Knights Templar. The secret being propagated to the world, as I said, in 1982, contained the genealogical record of the Davidic bloodline passing through Jesus Christ himself and his descendants to become the Frankish Merovingian king's bloodline, a secret which concealed through history, they say, curiously becomes the foundation for the modern occult itself, connected to their prophecy about the birth of a future Antichrist figure. The ancient secret that included a unique bloodline, supposedly descended from King David again, remember, was so powerfully replete with arcane knowledge that it actually threatened the ruling classes of Europe and the Church, granting the original Templars enough power to rival both Europe's nobles and the Church itself with extinction. The Knights of the Templar practiced and prospered, worshipped a god named Baphomet, which they believed to be Lucifer, Satan, and in time the Church, as well as the new King of France, who was supposedly awash in Templar debt, had enough. The decree went out, and the once untouchable Knights Templars had become criminals who had overgrown themselves so vastly, made such a lot of money and power in such a short time, were rounded up and put to death wherever they were found. You see, they were the original bankers of the day, the Knights Templar. Many of those Templars escaped to Scotland, giving a whole new meaning to the phrase getting off scot-free. Wouldn't you agree? As the Roman Catholic Church would to put them to death, Scotland was a place where they could be free and practice what they like. The Ross family were instrumental in this secret mission. They were first sheltered at Rosslyn Chapel. These first Templars coming over from Italy and Europe, the Ross family played a huge role and are so revered today. Any Ross you'll see gets special treatment. The year was 1313, and the abrupt disappearance of a major part of the European infrastructure left some to speculate that, Templars had escaped into the underground, taking with them their vast wealth, their vast power, and their vast amount of arcane knowledge. They went from France to Scotland. The Templars take their heretical lineage with them. They also take their science, their secrets with them, where they patiently wait and subtly work. Most of the day's secret fraternal orders, including the Scottish Rite Freemasonry, for instance, as well as the cunningly devised metaphysical movements which prepare all today for this new age. Even satanic cults themselves all trace their spiritual roots back to Grail Templarism, as well as the divine feminine, which we've seen in spades. I should use that term today. While in Scotland, the Templars create the Jacobite movement, putting its cause behind the Royal House of Stuart. The Davidic bloodline had now secured a crown in what was becoming the most powerful country in the world. And as Queen Elizabeth I dies without an heir, and James Stuart VI of Scotland becomes James I of England, the one who was responsible for the King James Version of the Bible again, remember, the Knights Templar and their Royal House of Stuart were, at the precise moment, connected to the most powerful bloodline, a bloodline which eventually produced Lady Diana Spencer, the late Princess of Wales, who then married the impostor to the British throne, Prince Charles. You had Prince Charles from the highest-ranking royal house of the bloodline of the House of Cain, with the highest-ranking, latest-ranking Stuart bloodline of all the Roman Catholic bloodlines of the kings and queens in England's history, now into two people. The two heirs with those bloodlines in them is Prince William and Prince Harry. Or Henry, I should say, as his real name is. How high up is this power of theirs? They are, of course, untouchable. Here's a quote from Druidion Pendragon, master counselor of the Brotherhood of Satan, after someone tried to uncover their cult. He once said, if you want to self-appoint yourself as Satanist spokespeople, at least know what you're talking about. One of those two so-called leaders even said they called the FBI and turned us in as being a satanic cult. This again is actually amusing. The Brotherhood has many connections in the law enforcement and judicial systems, and they have great secret respect for us as individual Satanists and as an organization. Did you hear that? Law enforcement agencies, justice systems, respect these individual Satanists. Very high-ranking. That's how high-ranking they really are. Many of our high clergy are Masonic, Freemasons, other related secret society members too. In fact, Masonic lore states that surviving Templars banded together in Scotland at first and eventually established the basic tenets of Freemasonry in those days, which was based on Templar secret teachings. In the book entitled Essential Wicca, it states this: the Templars were charged with worshipping an idol named Baphomet, urinating in the cross, ritual murder of children, worshipping the devil and committing acts of sodomy and bestiality. Though the order was disbanded and its leader, Jacques de Molay, famously executed on Friday the 13th, legend has it that a number of knights escaped to Scotland, where they became protectors of this bloodline affiliated to the Merovingians, the Stuarts, supposed descendants of King Arthur, the Kabbalistic Sun King of all the ages. But in another version, Jesus' family was supposedly perpetuated in a few European families, not exclusively the Merovingians. For example, the bloodline was also established in Britain by Joseph of Arimathea, from which the brother of Jesus, from which King Arthur and other kings of Britain were descended, supposedly. The Grail bloodline led to the Scottish House of Stuart. In the book The Scion Revelation, it states this: the notion that Mary Magdalene was pregnant by Jesus at his crucifixion became especially entrenched in France. Several French kings promoted the legend that descendants of Mary Magdalene's children founded the Merovingian bloodline of kings in France, the European royalty later on, and story revived by Richard Wagner, Hitler's favorite composer, by the way, in his opera Parsifal, and again in connection with Diana, Prince of Wales, who reportedly also had Merovingian blood. Yet another book written on this subject, called Secrets of the Code, says the first of the Sinclairs to be born in Scotland, Henri Sinclair, accompanied Godfrey de Bouillon to the Holy Land in 1096 and was even present at the fall of Jerusalem. He was accompanied by Knights of the Templar from 11 other leading Scottish aristocratic families too. Representatives of all 12 families met regularly at Rosslyn Chapel prior to the Crusades for many centuries afterwards. Space, back with more on this royal holy bloodline, they believe. Talk Radio, AM 640. I'm the guy they call Space. It's a view from space. It's Talk Radio, AM 640. I communicate by email only. I have no website, no net presence whatsoever, no Twitter account. I have no Facebook. I don't even have a cell phone. Space at 640toronto.com or spaceman at 640toronto.com are the two addresses, and I thank you for the one that you've sent. So I said before the break, the Stuarts, the first of the Sinclairs to be born in Scotland, Henri Sinclair, accompanied Godfrey de Bouillon to the Holy Land in 1096 and was even present at the fall of Jerusalem. He was accompanied by Knights of the Templar from 11 other leading Scottish aristocratic families. Representatives of all 12 families used to meet regularly at Rosslyn Chapel before the Crusades. And I believe, since it's many centuries afterwards, that first crusade, and there have been 20 of them, I believe we are now starting the 21st crusade. That's this war on terrorism and attacking places in the Middle East. The group included ancestors back in those days of the Stuarts, with whom the Sinclairs intermarried with, and were involved with the Templars throughout their history, as well as with Freemasonry in Scotland. With support of the Stuart cause, the Rex Deus, as they were known, Latin for God-King legend, suggests that the Stuarts were actually descended from among ancient hierarchy in biblical Israel. Jacob Rothschild, the current head of the Rothschild dynasty, the banking arm of the Illuminati in Europe, has also intermarried with the Sinclair family, forging an important alliance between the head family of the Illuminati and the supposed descendants of the Grail family.